Awesome. Okay, it looks like the main mass of sort of people joining is slowing down. So I will do my little intro and keep letting folks in. And then hopefully by the time I hand it over to you and Victor and Ron, we're good to go. So hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for the strategy session of our 7-part Business Health Navigator. Those who have been coming to every session, you're getting close to the end, which is exciting. All the great work you've been doing. My name is Kayla, and I'm happy to welcome you to the session today. If this is your first time attending a StartOut workshop, I just want to provide a little bit of background about what StartOut does. So we're a nonprofit organization that accelerates the growth of the LGBTQ plus community, working to drive its economic empowerment, building a world where every LGBTQ plus entrepreneur has equal access to lead, succeed, and shape the workforce of the future. And we do that with events like these, in-person events put on by our programming boards. We have an accelerator program, mentorship, and access to capital programs. So if you are new to StartOut, I invite you to poke around our website after this call and see if there are other programs that might also be helpful to you. And so now I am really excited to welcome our hosts for today, Victor and Ron. They're going to tell you all about strategy, and this is going to be a really exciting session based on the few minutes we chatted before it started. So thank you both so much for being here today. I'll hand it off for you two to introduce yourselves and get us started.
Kelly, so thank you so very much. We're talking about strategy. Is that what we're talking about today? So, hey, listen, first things first. Thank you so very much. I know that there's so many places that you can be, but I chose to be here because you think it's important that you listen to what Ron has to say around strategic planning, specifically for your business. If this is the first time that you join our series, welcome again. I encourage you to listen to the other series on our 5 vitals to elevate the health of your business around marketing, strategy, legal, financial, and well-being. And it's also my opportunity to remind you for our upcoming event where we're going to have all these intellectual capital individuals sharing their passion and their gift with us and be able to answer any questions that you have for what we just said, because we want your business to elevate performance and greater profitability and productivity. So P to the 3rd power, productivity, performance, and profitability. And Ron, no, you're not allowed, okay? So I've already said enough. Fabio, it's great to see you. Justin, you were the last person I thought I was going to see today, so thank you for joining us. And Brian, welcome everybody. Ron, the floor is yours, man. Bring it on. What do you got for us?
What do you got for us? I'll start with a quick intro. It's probably going to be the most boring part of our conversation. Still, it's good to get to know me. I'm an expat Israeli. I've been residing in the Bay Area for the last 24 years. I'm in a poly relationship in a throuple in the middle of the Castro, so think of it as ground zero gay. A little bit why that is important, this conversation. The tribe, so to speak, the LGBTQ tribe and the entrepreneurship tribe, or entrepreneurial tribe in San Francisco when I got here were very much separate circles. Every about half a decade, I would say every about 5 years, they came closer and closer to one another until it became a Venn diagram about 10 years ago. And now they're very much a circle, at least in my life. Why is that important? The platform that we're here in front of right now, I saw from its infancy, and now I'm seeing the fruits of said, let's say, sowing of the seeds 20 years later, sorry, 10 years later for StartOut, 20 years later for myself. So this is for me a wonderful opportunity to basically not bridge my worlds, but use my worlds together to help other entrepreneurs. A little bit of my entrepreneurship journey. I pretty much started my first startup, hypergrowth in Checkpoint, Israel, expat Israeli, hypergrowth to the world, and from the world to the Bay Area. From the Bay Area, it was very hard to move me anywhere else because of Bay Area. And my serial founding background is not as much connected to our conversation, but my mentorship, which is about 15 years old, and dozens of founders and dozens of entrepreneurs, including their ventures, have kind of went through my door, so to speak. And throughout these years, one of the things that connects my career to this conversation is strategic and tactical. For me, I kind of wanted the same, like qualitative and quantitative. If they have a good translation layer from one to another, you can speak to what will be or what can be versus what was, it could be, and what is, which is basically strategy. So most of the conversation today would be around what is planning, what is viable planning. I'm assuming most of you are entrepreneurs, so I will allow my bias to drive most of this conversation in terms of creating something from nothing. And I'll pause there, Victor. And where do you want to begin?
Well, first things first. Thank you for your introduction. I knew that was the reason why I liked you even more. So I didn't know about your Israeli background, but check. More importantly, or as importantly, what I'm excited about today is the opportunity for you to share what are some of the things that we should focus on as it relates to being strategic on our business, and taking into consideration that it doesn't have to be in the very beginning or in the middle or at end, because we still have to have that strategic approach.
100%.
So walk us through that roadmap. What would you say are some of the things that we ought to consider?
So one of the really, really important things when it comes to creating anything is to lean into and accept two things. A, discomfort, because we don't know what the market or the circumstances would be for our specific offering, be it a product or a service or anything in between. So first is the idea of iteration. Iteration is the baseline of all successful products and all successful services by virtue of it's an ongoing conversation. So when we're planning for something, we're looking at what we have and what we could be. That's what I was hinting on before. And the roadmap in general is where we'd like to go. Now, I know that you all had a marketing exercise, and within that market exercise, I can assume that we talked about brand and goal and mission statement and vision statements, usually starting from that Northern Star. And I'll go into my metaphor / analogy that's kind of big and out there. Also, not surprisingly, when I look at a product or an offering and I want to communicate it to the outside world, both by strategy and aligning the people that are either stakeholders, investors, or potential customers, I always think of the ultimate version of set product to service as a Northern Star. And that Northern Star sits on a mountain, and that is your company, that is your venture, that is your offering to the world. Now, if that star is communicated very, very clearly, in other words, the mission statement and vision statement are aligned, if the brand adjectives are aligned with the customer feelings, what they read a certain copy from your company or from your venture, no matter who approaches that mountain, by the time they get to the peak, which they can because they're looking at the same star no matter who the person is, you get a much, much, much clearer version of how the product or the offering or the company looks down the road. How does that connect to strategy? When we are defining things like a Northern Star, and I still side by the fact that a Northern Star is the ultimate yet unattainable version of the thing we're trying to create. So it sits above our capabilities, it sits above our reach or exposure or even technological investment or the audience. It literally is the perfect version of something that cannot be attained. It needs to be in the stars because then we can actually land on the moon. It's still good. Why is it important to strategy? That Northern Star is the start of a roadmap. So the conversation between the ground, so to speak, to the peak of that mountain, which is the product version that reaches the largest audience with the biggest margin, with the least amount of churn, all this wonderful unit economic stuff are secondary to the journey of that person. That journey of that person, again, be it a stakeholder or a customer, is going to be defined by how clearly they see the product and how easy it is for their language to relate to that product. Now, I can go down in two different directions when it comes to the strategy mapping itself. And one of the mythology that I'm really, really big a fan of is jobs to be done. Jobs to be done basically boils down the idea of why we pay money, which is we pay money for things we can't do ourselves. It's for us jobs to be done. And then the other route, which is a bit more philosophical, it's the idea of us as founders, entrepreneurs, and what happens to our cognitive dissonance between present reality. In the present reality for us as founders, we are always seeing basically the product the way it is in the market. And the reality of translating it to everybody else's future is a bit of a cognitive dissonance. Is here I am, I'm sitting with the perfect version of my product or my service, and my job is to now translate it to the outside world. That's where iteration comes in hand. That's where the dialogue / discomfort, comfort, and talking to your customers and talking to potential customers open the door to not just a clearer product, or a more attainable next milestone, be it, a larger audience, a different pipeline, or a slew of customers. No matter what it is that you want to expand on, it's an ongoing dialogue between this present future, so to speak, present future of ours into everybody else's physical future. So those are the two routes I will go. Victor, do you have a preference when it comes to one between the cognitive dissonance and discomfort, and the other is the iteration? Go on.
Let's go with the discomfort one, because that's the one that we always try to avoid anyway, because of the nature of it. So go for it.
Okay, so let's go for discomfort. When it comes to discomfort, one of the things that I've learned throughout my career, and that comes in many, many conversations with many founders, is this idea of a band. And I'll start it from, again, the exercise that I often present to founders. When you put on a band the things that drain the most energy from you in order to bring this product or service to life on one end, the things that take the most fuel. And then the other hand, you go on the right-hand side and you go the most right-hand side. If you think of it as a band. On the right-hand side of the band, there'll be the things that actually satisfy / reward me / support me or fuel me for more energy. The positive feedback loops and the negative feedback loop and everything in range between them. Now, two things I tell founders, because they're kind of dichotomic and they're kind of oxymoronic. One, it's necessary for a founder, especially entrepreneurs, early on to do everything from that gamut, to do from most uncomfortable, most unsatisfying to the most satisfying and the most comfortable. I will also say, which is kind of contradictory to what I just said, is the better you are at giving things away that are not a positive feedback loop once you've learned them, because learning an element of your business by virtue of being all the hats for all the functions in front of all the people, and founders often find themselves in that position. You need to wear a hat of something you're not comfortable. I'll give you the example on marketing / outbound / asking for money. One of the exercises I love the most is to tell a founder, if you're uncomfortable with asking for anything, it's not my, by the way, it's not my exercise. It's being co-opted and butchered in order to fit my style. The exercise is the same. I tell said founder, no matter what you go, no matter where you go, no matter which business you do business with, next time you ask for the check or get into the cashier, ask for a discount. And no matter what the situation is, no matter where, no matter when, ask for a discount. Now, on its surface, of course, it's a highly uncomfortable position to be in. On beneath the surface, you get acclimated to the idea of it's always a no unless you've asked the question. Always. If you want a guarantee on an answer for a question, don't ask it. That's a guarantee. 2, asking questions actually open doors to a lot of interesting permutations, which is strategy in a nutshell. Strategy is iteration from the present to the assumed future with enough fail mechanics or fail safe mechanics in order to make it more profitable, in order to make it more efficient. So back to the gamut, least fun, most fun. I argue very vehemently that for founders to start from a place of thinking that making their okay into good or good into great or bad into okay has equal measures importance than great into phenomenal or phenomenal into downright amazing. Now, time being finite, linear, and unrenewable, let's actually think through. Yes, we need the bad part. We need the part that's hard and uncomfortable and very much outside of our wheelhouse. That is to know the nature of the systems we work with. That is the unit economics. That is how the market behaves in this specific market sector. When I do any kind of SWOT analysis on my product, I understand what the positive up and down. Yes, Victor, you're jumping there. I understand what the customers are and how they behave in my market. So the entire gamut is important. Also, again, time being linear, unrenewable, and very much a progression. So we jump very, very quickly to the place of take the good and make it great. Take the great and make it phenomenal. Take the phenomenal and make it amazing by virtue of having time as finite. We talked about discomfort in a little bit because the left side is discomfort. Now, even on the right-hand side, in other words, things that give us, let's say I'm an outbound person, which for most who know me, including this conversation, you're not going to be too surprised. I love outbound. I love talking with people, starting relationship. By the way, another non-renewable element of our conversation. Relationships. You cannot restart a relationship. Relationship is an ongoing progressive idea, ongoing linear idea, ongoing non-renewable, because you cannot meet that person for the first time, the second time. So between relationships and time, the strategy thought is, the roadmap thinking is if I'm capable of A, building up the positive in the relationship, B, acknowledge and work through the things that are discomfortable, are comfortable, uncomfortable, and a little bit more friction driven. That's the balance with most founders. Now I'll pause there for a second. Victor, any follow-up questions? Or you just jump on?
Yeah. So, I mean, from the big picture, kind of, so bringing it down to where some of our audience may be, you mentioned product and how to take it from A to B, B to C, from bad to okay to good, good to bueno, and so forth, right? And I heard you say SWOT analysis. And what a
Yes.
concept, right? So can you, for one, give us an example of
Oh,
how
sure.
will a SWOT analysis look like for somebody that maybe has a service and somebody that maybe has a product? We might have a combination of both here. So that's one, and I'll wait after that for a follow-up question.
I'll just I'll open the door, I'll open the floor, so to speak, to somebody giving me a specific example before I just jump to my own. If it's jump to my own, I can do it right off the bat because I work as a fractional chief strategy officer for a specific company that I can genuinely share both the current market positioning, including where we are, and that will give a very clear example of what, you know, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats could be. Also, it's an interesting enough use case that actually covers a lot of the things that, for example, it's trying to change your market's behavior with money, specifically around artists streaming music and their royalties, which is fun. I would say it's fun as AF, and it could be that example or somebody from the audience that has a specific market for a specific product or specific question. Go ahead.
I'll wait for the audience, but if not, I have a very uncomfortable one. Speaking of being uncomfortable,
I'll take it.
and I'm gonna pick Antinia because she's calling herself the veggie plug lady, and so I just, you know, how will I do a SWOT analysis that will allow her take herself to the next level when it comes to her product, the veggie
Can I
plug.
get the elevator pitch of the product itself, or?
It's a women's hygiene, experience sophisticated vaginal hygiene. I don't know. I'm looking at it. I don't know it. Stay confident with superior hygiene, revolutionary protection against irritants, elevating.
I'll start right off the
feminine.
bat. Yeah, start right off the bat. Okay, so one of the strengths I'm seeing right off the bat, it's the messaging. The messaging is cheeky. The messaging is very, very clear. It's very truthful. At the same time, it kind of pokes holes at the current conversation of female hygiene and women's health in general. So I love the fact that right off the bat, the thing that jumps at me is the strength of the marketing message, because you open that door and it's just very, very clearly saying something in our system is off. Here is an answer. Also, I'm fully aware that that's an uncomfortable conversation, and I will make it comfortable by virtue of humor. Also, an element of design that's actually showing up very, very clearly in that specific webpage. Well done to whoever did it, by the way, touche. The color palette is not feminine only. It manages to bring in this idea of this is a woman's health product, this is a female hygiene product, and therefore we're opening the door to that conversation. So between the copy, the words themselves, and the design, I have to say that's a very, very clear strength of that specific brand right off the bat. I don't know the product, its unit economics, what is the stage of the company. I'm assuming the post revenue, because I'm assuming there's a little button says buy here or purchase here. So that kind of leads me to some idea of where the product is. And then of course the weaknesses. It sounds to me as if the quote unquote the baseline formula for, again, female hygiene and women's health starts from a very ignorant place in general. When it comes to public schools in general, they don't cover, or sometimes downright ignore, and worse, fight against things like tampons in either bathroom. So I can see how one of the weaknesses in general, it's the landscape itself. The landscape itself doesn't necessarily lend itself to the product succeeding. So in other words, there's an element of education from the product itself, from the product providers themselves, that has to happen in order for the customer to find that a solution to a problem they don't see. So I can absolutely see in terms of the landscape, how specifically schools, specifically in southeast of this country, within the Bible Belt and below, that will be very, very much quote unquote combative. Now, when it comes to the age of the customer, I can't really do profiling on the go. I can assume, assuming that's menstrual age and above, I can assume that we're talking about people that have individual purchasing power. So it's probably early 20s or late teens when people start getting their own money and their parents are supportive of, let's say, the category, which is our category, or even just general health or sexual education. So assuming those two things, it's a post-revenue product, and it's actually designed to not just educate the people around it, but provide a better solution. One and two. Three, we have the opportunity. Obviously, the opportunity is actually very, very similar to where the weaknesses are. And if we're talking about being uncomfortable versus comfortable, looking at specific markets that are not educated enough in terms of what the product or service are bringing to said market. And in our case, again, better. I'm assuming it's a better template, by the way, Victor. Is that a fair assessment?
It's fair.
Okay, so starting from that starting point of a better tampon, we're looking at the opportunity of tapping into existing tampons markets. So by doing so, taking all that we're taking into account, the strength being the brand and the messaging, and of course the product itself, which, by the way, I don't know what the competitive advantage or the secret sauce or the value adds are outside of the fact it's a better product. I'm assuming there's some sort of test bed with at least 70 to 170 data points that gives us this why it's better. That's like a whole different tangent when it comes to the product offering and how to monetize it, how to look at monetization, and I can definitely get there if we need to. So when you look at weaknesses, like for example, an uneducated customer base that wants to learn more, or there's the desire to learn more, that's easy. What about a customer base that doesn't want to learn more? The example of the Bible Belt and below, which is very much apropos to this conversation. What happens to that customer base when you tap it correctly? And that's what we talk about iteration being literally the bedrock of all good strategy. Iteration is the bedrock of all good ventures, period. A continuous conversation, dialogue between our present product or service in our own head to the reality of the people's future in front of us. It's always that dialogue. It's always asking those questions. So finding a messaging, specifically in the Bible Belt or below, which are very much not only oppressed and suppressed, they're sometimes downright fought against when it comes to, female hygiene and women's health. So taking that quote unquote weakness and then opening it up to the opportunity of tapping into the markets, Bible Belt and below, let's say high schools and colleges and above, and so forth and so on. And starting from a quote unquote CPG perspective, consumer product goods perspective, that actually leans into the things that are missing in the market. And like all markets, when it comes to a good product, and that looks like an awesome product, even starting on a small scale, showing or proving that the audience wants said product is not just an opportunity, it's a massive one. So I'll pause there.
First of all, kudos to you for taking it from, on the fly, not even knowing. You talk about discomfort. I told you I was going to try to derail you, but you got back on the wagon. So I appreciate that. So the idea of SWOT analysis on not only on our products, but on our services as well. And we just had an idea of what a SWOT analysis on a product should look like. Like my product is not a product, it's a service. And so how do I, how do we, those that happen to be in the services delivery to our clients, can potentially utilize that strategic tool of SWOT analysis? And I'm going to pick on Justin in a good way, Justin. So just because you're pickable. And here's his business. Psychotherapy, coaching, speaking services, and more, right? And um and Ron, for the record, I'm this is the first time I look at it, like just like you are, right?
I love it.
So on the spot, you know what it is? And so how would Justin, go ahead and say, what is my strategic approach as it relates to the service that I have of coaching, speaking, consulting, psychotherapy, clinicals, and we can leave the clinical supervision out.
Oh,
But
it's all good. It can be part of it too. It's okay.
Okay.
And kitchen sinks are absolutely fine for this.
So walk us through how will he maximize on the strategic plan so he can take his business to a higher level on performance, productivity, and profitability.
Let's start with performance, just because it's right in front of us. Because there are different facets to how the business interacts with customers, there are different front lines, so to speak. And actually, I will avoid violent metaphors because that's not my jam. There are different directions in which this product interfaces with its customers. Be it sessions, be it, there was a list of basically serving and offerings. First things first, when you really exactly psychotherapy, coaching, those all are people facing. So one of the things that I would do is sit down and write out before you do the strategic planning or the roadmap. The performance is starting from, I have this, let's say 5 offerings for what I've gathered thus far. In those 5 offerings, the lion's share of my business revenue comes from 1 or 2 of them. So actually I would say, like, think of it as reverse engineering of how your market currently behaves versus how you want the market to behave to the product differently. So first is performance, looking at where things sell quickly. And in my opinion, the most important one is people are buying it again, which is a returning customer. That's a very, very strong indicator of performance. And finding out what that specific coming back to the product, and I'm focusing on the 4th one on purpose, in terms of why is that a good indicator for performance? Once you ask, and if anybody knows statistics and probability enough, he knows the magic numbers are 17, 170, and 1700s when it comes to interviews. And another cheat sheet or a spoiler alert that helps a lot with that conversation is it's always good to create a survey that's 3 to 5 to 9 to 12, to 12 different questions, preferably 7. That you do a qualitative question with a quantitative response. Well, I'm talking about customer service now. If we know why customer, by virtue of that survey, even 17 of them, came back to this product for that specific reason, that gives us their specific value add, how they perceive it. That gives us our specific magic sauce in relation to them. That tells us, in terms of performance, where are we doing great and where are we doing not so great. So let's say there's a basket worth of offerings, like I just saw, when it comes to coaching and mentorship and psychotherapy. I've been therapized most of my adult life, so I can lean into the fact that CBT, DBT, and narrative behavioral therapy in general are very, very, very healthy. I can see how this relates to the queer population / LGBTQ plus element. And because those are Venn diagrams of sort, our mental health is our capacity to interact with the world and quote unquote be stable within it. And then the other one is, of course, what do we do in order for this product? I'm talking for the perspective of the entrepreneur, this product to reach a larger audience. So first, performance. The second one we talked about was productivity, right? So productivity. Once we get a lay of the land, so to speak, of how our customers are behaving specifically with our product, specifically with our service. In this case, it's multiple services. Once we get the performance element of how well do we do, the productivity element comes from, well, where are the weak areas? And much like Victor said earlier, I very much a fan of discomfort. So go to the places that you know that service needs a boost in terms of an audience. Or there's a sense of, from current audience, from current customer base, there's a need or a repeating question of how the business can grow. The productivity comes from doing it, quote unquote, in a smarter way. How can I be more productive? Is listening to my audience and listening to my customer base. We actually already mapped out what is good about the business, why are people coming back to buy said service, and now we can ask the follow-up questions. Why are they not buying other services, or what is missing in other services? And if we connect it to the SWOT analysis, that's where, weaknesses and threats are actually positive things, because the more you have to contrast against threats, the better are your definition of your product. The more you have weaknesses that are easily definable, those are opportunities for the product to grow in terms of iteration and features, again, or service. So back to our interesting offering, the company. Now that we looked at where things are good and where things can be better, we have performance, productivity, and what was the last one? Profitability. Let's go to profitability. We identified the good, we identified the could be better. Now it's a question of, does the unit economics of my offering match the current, let's say, market in that specific market segment, in that specific domain, in that specific vertical? So in this case, because we have 5 different service offerings, and they do map each other in what looks like a Venn diagram that I can dive into. I just know it exists by virtue of being one solution provider for those 5 elements. Interesting itself, and that we're talking about to, free consultation, and that's a starting point. So profitability. Unit economics, it's the boring term that follows very, very clear rules. The unit economics, for example, of a SaaS company, that's a software as a service company, it's usually like getting about 10,000 people eyeballs in order to generate $1 or $2 for lifetime of value of a customer. It's the very, very quote unquote boring financial conversation. Now, why is it important to A, strategy, and B, profitability? Learning what other services are similar to interesting that are around the market, and with SWOT analysis, because you get the threats and the opportunities and the weaknesses and strengths, you are mapping out, how do my competitors look like and what do they offer? For example, if they do a psychotherapy session, let's say a post a free consultation, because we already get the customer, they already get through the first gate, they got the gist of what the product offering of the services are, and then they choose psychotherapy. Going to psychotherapies that are within the same circle or domain or vertical, it's a very long sentence to say. It boils down to, are we serving LGBTQ plus individuals, specifically within the psychotherapy world? Finding 2 or 3 data points that are the competitors / competition. I love calling competition anything until a certain market range, because everything is a competition. Everything is basically a corporation as well as competition. Why? Because you're not grabbing enough market share to be a competition. You're not grabbing enough market share yet to be a collaboration, because if you get big enough, you are hiring target for acquisition target for a larger company. And if you're low enough and you're in the low numbers, you are a competitor trying to vie for them same spot. Back to interesting. So profitability and unit economics. Let's say a psychiatry session, by average, let's say $180 for an hour. And that exists within the landscape of how interesting is providing their services to specific individuals. So first things first, look at other businesses that are providing similar services that are clear enough to compare and contrast with. B, if you don't have businesses that offer, for example, the menagerie worth of offerings here. So it's almost like a piecemealing worth of offering. A way to look about that piecemealing worth of offering is going back to the, to the productivity side of the beginning and performance. Within those two, we pretty much ascertained what is working well for the company and what needs growth. So taking those into account and piecemealing the other businesses that are doing similar services, let's say we went from psychotherapy to a free consultation. And by the way, Victor, can you go back to the 5 offerings, the services? I'm really curious.
I'm just letting the
Okay.
website go. I have no control over it. Apologies.
No problem whatsoever. So let's say the psychotherapy is the thing that's the most profitable and it's very competitive in terms of its pricing. In order for the customer profile, LGBTQ plus, specifically like psychotherapy, in my case, trauma care or elastic PTSD or whatever list you want from there. And the things that are not evolving yet, or let's say the speaking services or the coaching are lagging behind. Those where you go to similar products and, oh, thank you. Appreciate it. Perfect. So let's assume the psychotherapy and clinical supervisions are easier or oh, perfect, even better. So let's start from the clinical supervision going upward. So from best to worst, from most profitable to least profitable, psychotherapy, coaching, speaking, consulting, clinical supervision. So let's assume speaking, consulting, and clinical supervision are the one who needs a little bit of TLC. The profitability will come when you find similar businesses that are piecemeal. Again, the idea of piecemealing is taking parts of a certain business, looking what the margins are, looking what the percentage from that business goes to specifically, it's a clinical supervision versus psychotherapy. So you find a business does a niche element of your business and you give it the percentages that it does. So in order to piecemeal, let's say, complete picture for interesting, we have psychotherapy parallels, coaching parallels within that specific domain. Let's say, again, mental health and specifically, I'm looking at the unlock the potential within. So I'm thinking that this is a coaching / mentorship / life coaching element. So LGBTQ life coaching in terms of coaching. Speaking consulting, that opens the door, of course, to people that will pay out of pocket for a specific service for your specific expertise. So finding that unique offering in other elements in your arena, in your domain, you can say, okay, my business is currently 30%, let's say psychotherapy, 20 coaching, 10 speaking, and goes onward for there. Finding other businesses to do that, give them the same percentage. In other words, if that business is, let's say, it generates $1 million ARR, $1 million per year, and specifically out of those $1 million, 30% comes from psychotherapy, and the business that you're looking at is very much similar to your own, then looking at other businesses that have the same scale with the other offerings might be very helpful. I'll pause there because it's a mathematical exercise. Victor, you want me to dig into the mathematical economics?
No, because then you're going to lose us all. Because not everybody's necessarily into the numbers, but not that they're not important. That's not what I'm saying. So thank you for that. And again, thank you for delving into it on the spur of the moment. I cannot not mention the white elephant in the room, which is the perception. Not only is it with products, but it's also with services. And I heard you mention it a couple of times. So what's your take on that?
My take on perception is twofold. And I'll go for the easiest answer right off the bat. There is a thing called folly of choices, and there is a thing called choice paralysis. So, customers in general don't want to be told, or would prefer to be exposed to a clear set or clear idea of the job that they want to be done. I'm going back to jobs to be done because it's an easy way to start this conversation. If I'm shelling out money, is because whatever it is that money gives me, it's something that I can't, won't, or don't desire to do. So perception is the vehicle that in which I communicate with my customer that that is something they want. Now, interesting, one of the things that I can say right off the bat, because it is a multi-front, multi-offering service that has an intrinsic core. Perception in this specific moment, I would say one of the growth opportunities that kind of screams at me from this specific landing page is distillation of what those 5 services are, limitation of what the brand adjective and tone and mission statement and vision statement, and making the services aside. Because what you're branding and what you're selling to the general audience is absolutely not these services. It's you. So I would take even a step further, and I will say what I say to most founders, again, that walk through my door and ask the question of how to be quote unquote better. Look at your business, look at your product, look at your service, look at your own story, look at your own narrative, look at your own trials and tribulations that make you the unique person to solve for the question. And by the way, with investment, it's problem is costing money or not making enough of it. Solution is making money or making more of it. And we are best to make solution happen. So the third part, which is we are best to make solution happen, it's not just the story of the brand. It's not just the story of you as its founder. It's not just the story of how you interface with the audience. It's the amalgamation, if not the interconnectedness of all of them combined. So in order to convey your services as something appealing, especially when there are multitudes of services, is avoid, as I said in the beginning, which is why I started from there, choice paralysis is a thing. The folly of choices is a thing. So when presenting something as comprehensive and as complex and layered as the services I'm saying within interesting, is maybe stepping back from the services itself and stepping into cohesion around your brand narrative, cohesion around your own story, cohesion around who you are as a person, because you are your brand, you are your offering, you are your elevator pitch and product and service combined in one person. So the more you are presenting and presented as the deliverer of said services rather than the services and then be delivered by you, in other words, change polarity and take ownership of the business and its potential, then the idea of multiple services is less daunting and less friction from an audience. And of course, I'll caution that with what SWOT analysis and road mapping are. Talk to your customers. Write 5 to 12 different qualitative questions with very, very quantitative answers. Why? Because people like to say, I like something, but how much out of 1 to 10 or 1 to 5? Or give them multiple options with the option for other, in what other platforms would you use or what other services would you use for the same solution. And if more than 3 say other and write different things, you probably need to clarify your product offering and product services in a different way. How does that become easy? That exercise I described earlier, the mountain, the Northern Star, the stakeholders, it has mechanics. And one of the mechanics, of course, is a conversation. Because if we don't even know where the stakeholder is, let's say the new customer is just traversing a third of the mountain, and we don't necessarily interface with them. If we do interface with them, we don't know where they are on the mountain. We're just asking them, what is your journey? Where are you now? And what does it look like? Grasping that picture and grasping that picture by several of the travelers that get to your product or service will give you the knowledge of how to basically make it more cohesive. So what are the mechanics of doing so? Of course, surveys, 1. 2, we have the tried and true version of a massive Reddit channel or a massive YouTube channel or anything along the lines, be it influencer or otherwise, that we can ask questions, big questions, and get answers when it comes to what we're offering. I'll connect it with cohesion. The more you exercise, and that is an exercise, by the way, that's an actual sit down, write your desired outcome for the person walking through the company. And yes, it's a question of, it's not just a Northern Star. It's not just a mission statement or vision statement. It's how do my customers feel when they interface with my services? How do my customers feel when they receive said services? So that dialogue is a continuous, as I said earlier, discomfort and iteration are the bedrock of amazing offerings. So exercise that conversation, exercise this idea of, in your case, interesting is By the way, what's your name for interesting? My apologies. What's Justin or?
Yes, my name is Justin, and the business is Intrinsic. Yes.
Okay, so Justin, it's if the more you have this conversation with yourself about what makes Justin the added value, what makes Justin the competitive advantage, what makes Justin the secret sauce. The rest are peripheral at best, and that's the beauty of your offering, because you are the unique story that brought you here to offer this help in the form of these services for this specific community. And the only way to connect those 5 different things I just said is by virtue of being you. We say lean into yourself and lean into your story as a marketing or as a strategy concept, it's true for everything, because our unique value add, our unique addition, our unique perspective, our unique faceted view of the world, even systems and its levers and pullers. Every one of us is a slightly different element or facet, but we're all the same diamond. We cut from the same stone. So shine those little facets, consider them as different facets for the same diamond, and you're better off describing it, said diamond, above that said mountain to said audience. I'll pause there.
Hey, Justin, speaking about free consultation, you're the lucky one today. Hey, and what are the chances that your business gets to be on Gay Street? Wait a minute, we're all moving over there so we can, um, maximize on the opportunity. So thank you for playing with us. I appreciate it. One thing that comes to mind, Ron, that I will imagine that will apply to everyone is we're coming out of this pandemic thing, right? Where we locked ourselves in the room, we didn't want to get out, and now we're so comfortable running our business from our own home. Like I can go anywhere, right? And so we also, some of us, we already have a website like Justin does, and the website can do certain amount of good job in selling the product and the services. But how is that really selling me, who is the one who's actually running the show? So what should our strategic approach should be as it relates to coming out of the closet, if you will, and making sure that people see us for who we are, hear our story, and at the same time, grab our bag that we're bringing in with us, which is the product or service that we offer to the community that has brought it to this moment present in time, which is the gift that we got to give to society. So let me just stop there.
Awesome. So I unpack the 3-part question into its 3 parts from my perspective. Let's start with the biggest one that has very little to do with the business itself or the offering, service or product, which is coming out of COVID. Coming out of COVID, and I'm not going to go too much into detail because I'm a big fan of behavioral psychology, positive psychology, and considering I've been therapized to death for most of my life, I am alive and well because of that. Cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectic behavioral therapy. The long story short is we all experience what we call elastic PTSD. It's lasted for about 2.5 years. Those of us who are prone to any kind of trauma, anxiety, or depression have probably suffered a lot more from it than others. So looking at the landscape, looking at the reality of a post-COVID world, for most of us, it's a reenactment, a trauma reenactment, or trauma placement for something that already been there before. So I'm not going to go into too much of the psychotherapy element or core negative beliefs or maladaptive coping mechanisms. I will say the following. For business to relate to that is start the conversation from, as Victor said and suggested, the web page. In other words, whatever it is the first interface of your audience has with your service or product. And landing page is item number 2, and we'll get to that in a second. That's the place you dispel as best as you can this idea of, let's say, friction around the new product or service, friction around the new offering, how to do it. So I started with PTSD and COVID and going from a world that's very much, we thought it was interconnected, actually it was interdependent, which was one of the lessons of the pandemic. And interdependent is not the greatest thing because there's no autonomy with each part of the system to actually operate and fulfill the needs of said population. So it's a very long way of saying COVID told us how effed we are by virtue of assuming the system will work on a planetary scale or a national scale, and therefore they failed. How does that connect to our business? Now that we can take our business anywhere we want to, and it can have an audience of whoever it is we put it in front of, I will go to item 2 on that list. Item 2 on that list is the landing page. So when I think of landing page, and again, I'm going to do the spoiler alert, the cheat sheet version of this. Your landing page has to be convertee. It has to have the clear thing that leads in the funnel from the person landing on it to the person making a decision around your business. Clear as daylight, clear as noon, clear as a spring afternoon. It's literally, it needs to be that bright and that clear. So in the case of, let's say, Interesting or the female hygiene / women health product, the women's health product did a really good job of saying, here's my product. I want you to buy this because I'm changing the landscape of female health. And then when it's Interesting, we're talking about specifically right off the bat, let's get the free consultation. So taking the step of, let's say you did the exercise of distilling it to a single story, it's all about that free consultation. So if you think of the landing page as a dialogue between you and potential customers, for Interesting, it will be selling the free consultation over anything else in order to get that idea of not tunnel view, but rather a limiting option that they get to that ask at the end. And that ask at the end is very appealing. That free consultation is very desirable. Same with, of course, the female hygiene product, because if the person comes at the end and goes like, I need to learn more about this because this is freaking awesome. That is the conversion. So always think, at least in my humble opinion, always think of landing pages as not even a calling card or business card, but rather a big ass marquee flashing in lights telling us what we're about to give that person in front of us, dispelling the question of what it is and honing in on the question of how can we pay for it and how do we move forward. So far, so good. I said 3 elements of COVID and decentralization, which will be kind of counterproductive to everything I said, or at least it will be cheeky to everything I said thus far. There's also benefit, and significant one, in learning and knowing your actual geofence of your influence. And what I mean by that, there is an immense benefit when an entrepreneur asks me, where should I start my startup? My answer will never be Bay Area. My answer will always be wherever you are, because that is the place you have the most support systems, you have the most knowledge, you have the most reach, you have the most accessibility. And by virtue of being there, you will know a lot more of how to go elsewhere. Now, what I'm saying is like saying one thing and its opposite, because we are decentralized and it is national. It's very easy for Delaware C Corp to be in every one of the states. It's easier to pay taxes and so forth and so on. Knowing that world, also knowing that, you know what, I'm in specifically Boca Raton in Florida, and I'm specifically providing, let's say, late life financial services for very specific subtype of population. That's great. That specific offering can translate itself to a national stage. Absolutely will translate itself to a national stage. Absolutely could expand beyond that. There's something very powerful in looking around you physically, see the place that you live within, and see what levers and pullers you've managed to push, can push, or haven't pushed yet, that will give you a recognition and exposure. Now, recognition and exposure is a whole other conversation, and I will rope it into strategy if we have to. I can just say the cheat sheet version of it, which is create enough content, be it on your landing page or online, that will paint you as a thought leader without spelling out your offering, be it service or product, talking about the problem at a whole, being humble in describing the problem without providing your specific solution. Creating enough of that kind of content over time creates what I call critical mass of artifacts, and specifically critical mass of evergreen artifacts, which is very, very long marketing way to say we have enough stuff online that talks about the same exact thing and it will always be there. So when somebody stumbles on my webpage, or stumbles on my YouTube channel, they can consume the rest. Think of it as the akin to, or being akin to, I found a really good video on YouTube from one of my favorite, Kurzgesagt, which is Kernel of Truth. It's a science YouTube video. When I watched them the first time, I was one of the 10,000 subscribers. They're like an empire now. And the whole idea was taking really, really complex scientific ideas and putting them into animation. What is the very first thing I did when I landed on this random YouTube video? I consumed 5 more. So the magic of creating enough copy to create recognition is having enough of it that speaks to the problem peripherally and then directly. And yes, you go for peripheral first into direct. That opens the door for people to not understand your brand, which is of course a given by virtue of reading more about the brand and consuming more media or copy around the brand. Also, it dispels a lot of the friction, because one of the things we talk about when it comes to customers is the friction of shelling out that money, the friction of understanding the service or the product. I'll pause there.
All right. Lots around our strategic approach to making our businesses more productive, greater performance and profitability. We delved into the SWOT analysis of what it will look, smell, sounds like for the product and a service. And then we demystify the white elephant in the room of perception. So, and now we ended up with, what about this thing of coming out of COVID, and how do we position ourselves as the drivers of our business in a strategic way, that we don't only maximize the product and services that we sell, but how do we position ourselves for success? So that's kind of where, the road we've taken so far and where we are. What else are you taking us, Ron? What comes to mind?
What comes to mind is actually this simplifying a lot. I'm a big fan of the most productive things are usually the simplest. And if you're familiar with the scientific term Occam's razor, often the simplest solution for a very complex problem is the right one. For example, why did the person didn't show up in time for a meeting? Probably because they couldn't, for example. So take everything I said, everything I shared, everything I touched upon, and ask yourself a question, because I do it with all founders. I'll do it with all of you because it's just one of my favorite things. Take anything I say with a grain of salt, the size of an iceberg. Why? Because if life is a marketplace, and life is a marketplace, and you walk in from one tent to another, looking at different wares, different offerings, different gadgets, different gizmos, and they don't call to you, they don't resonate with you. 2 things. A, GTFO, that's not for you. Something that doesn't resonate with you is not for you. I'll explain why in a second, at least my hypothesis around it. B, if it does resonate with you, and if it does connect with you, then absolutely pick it up. It's right for you. Now, why? I believe that I believe that instinct and gut feeling and intuition are one and the same, and they're the following, in my humble opinion, that the total sum of our experiences, choices, suggestions, and their outcome, parked in our subconscious going, this is the likely outcome for us. So listening to that specific tone and listening to that specific voice opens the door to going through that marketplace called life and choosing the wares that actually resonate with you. So if I talked about marketing critical mass and that doesn't resonate with you, it's because it's not for you. There is something else that's akin to it or similar to it that will benefit you a lot more. And listening to that specific voice, I think it's a superpower, because it often pushes us towards the things we're less comfortable about and more rewarding for us. So it's not an oxymoron that we look at the things that are most difficult and most removed from us, the things to go to. By the way, entrepreneurship in its nature is creating something out of nothing, that cognitive dissonance of our present mind to everybody else's physical future. Solving for that is not making it simpler or more complex. Solving for that is being ourselves. If I take the example of Justin, or I take the example of the female hygiene / women health. So all the things that I said, the thing I will pause on and actually double down on is that grain of salt the size of an iceberg is important because you're the narrator of your story. I like to say when it comes to, I'm a big video game fanatic, if that was not clear from the posters around me, and the amount of, I would call it fictional worlds I consumed throughout my life, because there are a big chunk of it that needed for me to escape there. Whatever we take when it comes to our, let's say, reality around us, the things that are not comfortable. The things that are not comfortable are actually the things we need and want to do, and why. They're not diametrically opposed to the things that are easy. People stop at that cliff, right at that cliff, when it comes to creating something new from nothing. They right at the edge, they stop because the jumping off that cliff is terrifying, mortally so. That being said, if we are ourselves and that sounds and feel like that's the place I want to go, this is the thing I want to create, this is the thing I want to bring about to the world, service, product, or otherwise. We don't even think of it as a cliff. It's a jumping point. It's a step. So as scary as building wings on the way down to a cliff are, is actually probably where 99.9% of the people stopped before us and didn't make this happen. Yet we can, and we are. So jumping off that cliff, as uncomfortable as it is, learning where are the comfort and discomfort of my business, and accepting my intuition as the voice that resonates behind it and pushes us forward to those places that are uncomfortable, to those places that it's clear for us to bring this about. And think of it this way, you're on a mission to bring about something wonderful. Each and every one of you is positioned to bring to the world something that I would love for it to be in it. Something that will make my life greater, bigger, better, and by virtue of you succeeding. The reason I love mentorship as much as I do is the reality is I am selfish. And I'm selfish and lazy. So if somebody else is going to provide for a better solution for something I need in my life, and that is easier for me, and I'm surrounded by that happiness, success, and wealth, then of course I'll do whatever the F I can for that person to be successful, because I want people to be surrounded by people that are not only understanding of my woes and my trials and tribulation, but also triumphed. And the more triumph I'm surrounded by, the more triumph we can create. Positive feedback loops being what they are, negative feedback loops being what they are. We're the positive feedback loop. Every single person in this room can bring about something that I need in mind. And I'm too selfish and lazy to do it myself, but I'm not selfish and lazy in terms of wanting it to be around me. Stop there.
Self-realization here. Bring it on. A greater gift than we thought that we were going to get. Does anyone in the room have any questions, comments, or curiosities around strategic approach to their own business that may be challenged by? And when I give you time to think about it, perhaps, Ron, we can think about hanging fruit, any resources that you might have come across that for those of us that may not be as strategic, we can utilize to help.
I'll start with the biggest elephant in the room right off the bat. Get familiarized with generative AI on any level, because the market in about 3 years is going to be divided, those who have it as a productivity tool and those who don't. If you want the cheat code on how to start on that, I have done this numerous times. I say the following sentence: ChatGPT Pro only costs $20 a month. You can create your own custom engine for anything, be it personal assistant to business related to invoicing. It doesn't matter. Just create the personal one. When you create that personal one, within a week or two, you'll be versed enough in what the mechanics of that productivity coefficient are. And by the way, they're easily a magnitude to 2. In other words, they're 10x to 100x more productive. So if we are living under the delusion of these 3 years are not going to be formative in terms of how our marketplace looks like, or part-time employees or full-time employees, think of it this way. You are, as a hiring manager, look at 2 people that are exactly the same in skill, hunger, ambition, vision alignment, and our company culture alignment. They're just the same, and they're 100% on all of them. One of said people has generative AI as a productivity tool. The other doesn't. Who do you think will get hired? The one that can capable of 10x, 100x productivity, or the one that isn't? So let's divorce ourselves with the idea of this is not important, it's a fab. when I first been handed generative AI, because I'm a tactical strategic thinker and I'm a problem solver, basically. Problem solution, that's my addiction. And qualitative to quantitative data can be the thread that defines my career. Conversion of said to the other, structure to unstructured, and unstructured to structure, qualitative to quantitative, quantitative to qualitative. I felt like a scribe from prehistoric times, chiseling on walls, and that would be my tool. And somebody literally came from the heavens and gave me a laptop and full understanding of what a word processor is. That's what was generative AI for me. I went from a productivity of, let's say, one pitch deck for about a couple hours of my time to analyze to I can do now close to 2,000 in a day if I can catch up to the quality control, which is its own problem. Why am I sharing this? Because it is the elephant in the room. It's the fad. It's the thing that we're thinking of another boom bust cycle around. No, this is the fire and the will combined, and not even that, probably with radio and print all in one, because we moved from multiple sources of multiple informations to a distilled source that aligned with our needs specifically. So that leapfrog is not just zeitgeist changing or paradigm building. It's absolutely all of the above and then some. So that's the very first thing I will live on, because if you haven't jumped on that bandwagon yet, this is your call to action. This is your challenge. This is the hero's journey version of a dire catastrophe is about to hit your village. Get out and save us. That's that. So that's one. You want me to go 2 and 3? Okay, 2. Never be afraid of asking questions from the people around you that are in your purview. Whatever vertical you're in, whatever domain you're in, get familiarized with the players, with the actors, and the way to do it is show up in events like this one. Show up in physical gatherings. Be present to your specific economy and industry. Now, a cheat code that I got, I'm a pageant queen from San Francisco. So I was Mr. Leather San Francisco 2008. And one of the things that I got when I was Mr. San Francisco Leather 2008, which is its own amusing title. It's not that important when it comes to the title. What is important is, one of the advice I got was from Sister Roma, which is Sister of Perpetual Indulgence. Sister Roma is very famous in San Francisco. She told me the following: nobody remembers how long you've been anywhere. Everybody remembers if you've been there or not. Make a splash in virtual and physical events around you. Get familiarized with the players around you, because there'll be a critical mass point, much like with copy and artifacts when it comes to marketing, that people will recognize you from 2 different data points. They bring Victor's name, I'll bring Victor's name, and Justin will bring Victor's name in a conversation. And that's enough to solidify you as a player within that industry, as a player within that domain. So I would say item number 2, step away from worrying about being exposure and exposed. And 2, into asking questions and tapping resources. Now that brings me to item number 3, resources themselves. Generative AI being one of the things we just talked about, and then the other one will be events or gatherings that are around your business. The third one will be the very, very simplest one, which is make yourself known. So once you connected with generative AI, once you have enough content, once you go to enough places, you can, and I give my favorite example. I have a founder that finally got to a really, really large round for them, and they could hire. And outside of my recommendations with hiring, which I could say really quick: hire for hunger more than skill, hire for ambition more than hunger, hire for alignment of vision more than the skill, because people who have all of the above that I said they should have will learn things on the fly and grow with the company better, be it a part-time employee or full-time employee. That's on the hiring side. When it comes to the growth side, asking things for example, with the case of this founder, there's a group, nonprofit group, much like StartOut, that's called Out in Tech. And it's very underutilized, at least in my world. There are tons of founders that are seeking really, really good, high quality LGBTQ plus employees. Finding out about Out in Tech, which by the way has a chapter in almost every metropolitan city in the country and quite a few in others, more rural ones, it's one of those treasure troves that is almost weird for people not to tap into. Things like Out in Tech are a search away from you. So if your business is in need of a marketing X, Y, and Z, like for example, one of the things that I just said, the whole Northern Star, mission statement, vision statement. Learning how to find the resources that can give you that, be it by virtue of meeting them in an event or meeting them in person or searching for them online, that'll be a place to do it. But and do it. It's a doing part. So if the first one is Gen AI and the second one is expose myself, then the third one is act. The action will always, always, always be louder than any other word in any other context. So asking people the question, learning about your industry, presenting yourself more frequently in said industry will open the door to meeting the people that will unlock more resources. So I'm sorry, Victor, that I'm being vague when it comes to the resources themselves in terms to the like out in tech versus, let's say, StartOut. You are here. This is StartOut. One of the things that I highly recommend, look at your own profile within StartOut and figure out if you have access to the most things you can, because there are endless amount of webinars. I'm one of the expert mentors for StartOut, and I generally help pretty much any company at any stage from any vertical. Reason being is because I'm, swimming in privilege and entitlement in the middle of the Castro. My job in this world is to step aside and bring forward other people's space and other people's offering. There are a lot like me, and the expert mentor, specifically for entrepreneurship. There are a lot of other resources that actually have very little to do with entrepreneurship and everything to do with, let's say, business, community, or bridging between the two. Tap into that. Look at the profile. Look at the portal. Look at the events around you. In other words, engage. If I take all the three things from before and boil and distill them to one thing, is engage. Engage. This is engagement. You are engaged in this conversation, and you will benefit from said conversation, hopefully, on some level that will be beneficial for not just your product and your service, but more importantly to you. So engage.
So engaging it is, and it's not just online, all right? Literally coming out of pandemic, maybe keeping us indoors, but that doesn't mean that we have to stay indoors. So we gotta engage with our clients and our potential clients, not only online, but also in person. Some sort of like we get the opportunity to be hybrid with the work that most of us do. And so I absolutely positively suggest, my humble opinion, that you find opportunities that you can engage more about you, your story, and your business by either doing some sort of a volunteer work or community involvement or a paid engagement, of course, both online and in the community. Wow. So here's what happens when you're having fun. A lot of, time just flies and waits for no one, absolutely no one. So here's something for you guys to laugh about. Ron's picture. So to you, thank you very much for your insight, for sharing your love and your passion with us around our purpose on the holistic approach to your business well-being. We just went through well-being, finance, legal, marketing, and strategy. So this ends the 5 vitals that we promised that we were going to deliver. If you missed it, go back and watch the video. At the end of the day, we're looking for how can we help your business flourish, if anything, around productivity, performance, and profitability. And so what's coming up next? The Entrepreneurial Summit, where I'm going to have these 5, actually 6 superpowered intellectual capital individuals in a room. I don't even know what that's going to look like. Where they're all going to be there for you, so you can raise any questions as it relates to the 5 vitals. When is this going to happen? And it's the closing of our program. It's on Tuesday, September 10, 24 at 1500 Eastern Standard Time. And most of all, I'll end the day with how it started. Thank you so very much for taking the time to be with us. Ron, thank you for your gift. And for those of you that volunteer or were self-volunteer, thank you. And I look forward to seeing you again. Ciao for now. And Kelly, it's all yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ron and Victor. That was super interesting and great. And I see a question in the chat about seeing the previous recordings. I think all of them are up on StartOut's YouTube page, but I will double check right when we hop off and make sure. And then this one will be up within a week. I'll make sure that we get it up there. And I hope to see everyone in September at the last session. Thank you all and have a great rest of your day.
Hey, ciao for now.
Bye, everyone.